Okay, hi everyone. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on another edition of our webinar series, Inside Immigration. Today we are joined by panelists Alexandra Cole and Madison Kelly. Please feel free to ask any questions via the questions icon at the top of your screen, and we will do our best to address them at the end. If the panelists do not get to your question, you can contact them through the information provided on screen. And with that being said, I'll hand things over to our panelists.
Thank you, Eve, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining Madison and I today. We do have quite a few updates and just little informational pieces we wanted to cover today. So I'll get right into kind of the most immediately pressing one and most recent. On October 20th, which was just this past Friday, IRCC's Deputy Minister provided an update on Canada-India relations and the impact that that will have on immigration processing. There is an update on IRCC's website with regard to this, but we have a little bit more information based upon the release that happened on Friday. So significantly, there have been 41 diplomats withdrawn from India, and there has been a significant decrease in the number of on-site IRCC officers in India. Prior to this change, there were 27, and now there are 5. The 5 processing officers who are remaining in India are going to be focusing on applications and matters that require that in-person presence. That includes things like requests for urgent processing, liaising with IRCC's third-party service providers who are responsible for things like visa stamping at the visa application centers and providing biometrics, panel physicians who are providing medicals on behalf of IRCC. So as a result of that significant reduction of staff, there are going to be processing delays. The Deputy Minister provided some information on the anticipated scale of those delays. And speaking about that, they're expecting approximately 17,000 decisions to be backlogged from October to December of this year. And I think rather optimistically are hoping that processing should return to normal by early 2024. One of the kind of important things to remember with these changes is that because immigration has processing centers globally, before these changes, about 89% of applications were already being processed outside of India. So that's going to continue to happen. And so a lot of the applications are still going to be processed around the globe at different consulates, which will hopefully mitigate some of the delays. But overall, because of the change in staffing, we are going to see delays. What the actual scope is going to be in reality, we have yet to see. It's still very new, but we will be monitoring that in the coming months and trying to make sure that any of those impacts are mitigated for our clients. They did mention that for international students, there isn't expected to be any significant delays, maybe a week or so added to the processing time for students. So this change is mostly going to affect, visas for other types of travelers and work permit processing. Another kind of positive light here is the 2-week processing standard that we've seen traditionally under the global skills strategy for high-skilled employees is still a priority, and the government is making efforts to continue to honor that 2-week processing standard. So any applications that do qualify for that GSS quick processing should still be processed faster than those that do not, regardless of these changes. Madison, is there anything you wanted to kind of add to that, or anything you think I've missed that might be helpful?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything there.
Okay, perfect. So I'm sure we may be receiving some questions on that, and we'll get to those once we've gone through our agenda today. Next, we kind of wanted to talk about some of the policies that we've seen coming out in the last year or so, as well as some changes that we've noticed in policy that didn't necessarily have any specific announcement from immigration. It's just we've noticed some changes that we think are relevant. So the postgraduate work permit extension policy, there have been a few of these policies coming out in the last few years. One was in 2022 where postgraduate work permit holders were given flexibility to extend their work permits. And most recently, there was a update and kind of extension of that flexibility, which was implemented in April of this year and is set to expire on December 31st of this year. So we just wanted to give a reminder to anyone who this might affect that it is coming up for expiry. So if you do think you might be eligible, you should look into it and make sure that you are filing the application for additional time on a work permit in Canada before the deadline. Who this policy is for, it's for international graduates who have either a recently expired or expiring postgraduate work permit. They are eligible to obtain an additional work permit or an extended work permit, which will be an open work permit for up to 18 months. One of the key eligibility criteria is that the applicant must have held or hold a postgraduate work permit with an expiry date between September 20th, 2021 and December 31st, 2023. So this is a great policy to use if you are eligible and you want to have more time to gain valuable Canadian work experience. A lot of postgraduate work permit holders have not been able to apply for permanent residency for various reasons. The government has enacted a lot of these policies to help people who may have been disadvantaged coming out of the, the COVID pandemic, where it may have been harder to secure employment or maintain their employment as a result of downgrades and layoffs and things like that, which we all know happened. So this is a great way to maybe make back some of that time you might have lost and get more of a period of authorized work here. The next topic about off-campus work and completion of a program of studies comes from a policy of immigration where it looks like they've actually made a change as of August of this year. There's no big announcement or bulletin or anything like that that was made. It's just a little change that we noticed in the language. Prior to what we think was around August 2023, the policy stated that as soon as a student had completed their program of study, meaning they were done studying, they'd finished their program requirements, they were no longer authorized to work on their study permit if they had been eligible until they had filed their postgraduate work permit or other type of work permit. Now the policy indicates that once they finish their program of study, their program requirements, as long as they haven't yet received written confirmation from the school that they are done, they can still keep working on a part-time basis until they get that written confirmation. So what that means is, let's say I just finished my last exam, I'm done. I have no other requirements for graduation, but I don't yet have either, my transcript, my diploma, or, an email or letter from the school saying that I'm done. I can still keep working part-time on my study permit if I'm eligible to do so. So that's actually really great because before this change, the policy was making, students stop working at that time that they finished their last exam. And now they can keep working. So I think that's a great little policy change. Of course, the actual eligibility to work on a study permit flows from immigration's regulations. So any student who holds a study permit still needs to make sure that they're meeting the requirements to work under the regulations. And as long as they do, they can follow this policy and they can work part-time while they're waiting for that written confirmation of completion.
Thank you, Alex. So I will now get into the work permits for dependent children of skilled workers. So this was announced back in the summer for allowing dependent children of temporary foreign workers to be eligible for a work permit if they are of legal working age. So overall, we're seeing pretty good results from this. They're being processed at the ports of entry at the border. We do recommend getting, if you have a dependent child that is looking to get work authorization, that they do so upon initial entry, just for ease of processing. There may be a little bit of pushback from CBSA when applying at the border as a delayed entry after initial processing, but overall, we're seeing a lot of clients take advantage of this, and the program seems to be doing very well. Alex, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just to your point on, if for some reason you haven't applied for the work permit for your children on initial entry, you do also have the option to file the work permit application from within the country once they're here. So that you don't have to go back to the border to do it and kind of avoid having any pushback or issues like that. So there's various ways you can apply for it. But no, it's great. And I think a lot of, I worked while I was in high school, and I think I started when I was 14. So I think this has been a long time coming. There used to be this pilot project for this as well. It was closed for some time. And now they've brought it back, which I think is going to be helpful, especially for, kids who might want to gain internship experience or something for their applications, maybe for post-secondary school. This makes it a lot easier for them to do that. So it's a great change, and we've been having really good results with it.
For sure.
So we just wanted to talk about something that recently we have encountered with respect to work permits at the port of entry. So any employer in Canada that wants to hire a foreign worker needs to submit the details of employment to immigration ahead of time through an employer portal. So this is all done online. It generates, a receipt number and an application number, which are then part of the work permit package. The policy from IRCC requires that the company who is filing those offer details is the Canadian entity. So as an example, we sometimes work with companies from outside of Canada who have been contracted by a Canadian company to provide a service. So the foreign company is now sending in their employee to service under that contract. Under IRCC's policy, their preference is that the Canadian company would be submitting those offer details. Now, practically speaking, this worker is still really employed with their foreign company. They're just, coming as a service provider. So oftentimes the preference of the companies is that the employer who is outside of Canada is the one who's submitting those offer details and filling out the employer portal. Most ports of entry in Canada, most Canada Border Services agency officers are understanding of that. It's a practical reality of the way that those sorts of service provider relationships are set up, that it makes sense for it to be the foreign company who is filling out the portal details. There are a few ports in Canada who are quite strict with it. The one that we've known about for some time now is the port of entry in Calgary, the Calgary airport there. But most recently, we also had a similar kind of pushback on a foreign employer portal at the Ottawa airport. So that's a new development that we've seen. So we'll be changing our practices for Ottawa as we've done for Calgary, to make sure that we're using the Canadian company employer portals where we can. But that's, something that service providers of immigration services and representatives will have to deal with on a case-by-case basis, but it's something we just wanted to flag because we recently experienced that.
Awesome. So the next on our agenda is the Auditor General of Canada. So last week they published a report on processing applications for permanent residency. The Office of the Auditor General found that in 2022, Canada met its admission target of 431,645 new PRs. In 2025, it expects to welcome 500,000 permanent residents. IRCC processes PR applications across 85 offices with approximately 2,600 staff in Canada and abroad. By the end of 2022, about 99,000 refugee applications were still waiting to be processed. Processing times for refugee applications were almost 3 years on average. So with this, the most impacted category for PR processing delays they found were within the refugee and humanitarian classes. So that was aside from the family classes and aside from the economic classes as well. So they found different processing capabilities and different offices contributed to most of these backlogs. The Office of the Auditor General found that IRCC assigned application workloads to offices without assessing whether they had the sufficient resources to process the application. So most kind of hit offices would have been within the Africa region for the abroad offices. The Office of the Auditor General pretty much recommended that IRCC needs to examine differential outcomes and processing times relating to automated decision making, and along with reallocating sufficient resources to various offices. So we hope to see some improvements on processing times based on these recommendations from the Office of the Auditor General over, the years to come. So we'll see kind of how that plays out based on their recommendations. Alex, did you want to add anything to that piece? No, okay. So next on our agenda, we have the new and exciting program, PR for Ukrainians. So on Monday of this week, the Government of Canada announced an exciting new permanent residency pathway for Ukrainians. This new temporary public policy allows for Ukrainian nationals with family in Canada to apply for permanent residency. This policy takes from the emergency travel program that was announced back in March of 2022. To support the Ukraine nationals on a temporary basis, and it takes it one step further with a pathway for PR. So this includes familial relationships, including spouses or common law partners, parents, children, grandchildren, grandparents, and siblings of an eligible Canadian, so meaning a Canadian PR or a Canadian citizen. The Ukrainian national must be in Canada at the time the application is submitted, so they would likely be on that emergency travel temporary program. And they must also be in Canada at the time that PR is granted. So, and they must have not have any admissible issues into Canada. So for further information on this program, since it's very new, please feel free to contact our office for more information. Alex, did you want to add anything to the Ukrainian PR pathway?
No, Madison, I think you covered it perfectly.
Okay, great. So last on our agenda here, we have some special immigration measures. So on September 29th, IRCC extended the deadline to apply for special immigration measures for Turkish and Syrian nationals in response to the major earthquake from February of this year. So the deadline now is extended until January 3rd, 2024. Under these extended measures, Turkish and Syrian nationals in Canada with valid temporary resident status can continue to study, work, or visit family by applying for an extension of their status. They can also move between temporary streams and benefit from an open work permit. So, great news to hear that they've extended that. So if you haven't taken up, on that great program, we encourage you to do so and contact us if you have any questions.
Yeah, nothing to add there. I see that we do have some questions coming in. They are mostly quite fact specific, and in some instances, we don't have enough information to provide feedback. If anyone has questions about the subject matter of this webinar, please do put your questions in the chat as we're talking about this. If there is a question that you've sent and we don't respond to it, I've looked at them all, and unfortunately we do need some more information for the majority of them. There is one where I can provide a general answer. So the question was, my husband just applied for a spousal open work permit through me. I wanted to know whether the application is only processed in a Canadian office and how long they are taking now. So it will depend, where it's processed will depend on where the spouse was located, and that will also dictate the processing time based upon the processing office. So if you do want more information on that, please reach out to us and we can see if we can assist and if there's anything we can do. I would encourage everyone who does have kind of their case specific questions to reach out to Madison or I by email. Our emails are on the webinar and we would be happy to help you so that we can have a fulsome discussion and kind of have a better sense of what the specific scenario is. Just reading a few questions here. One of the questions is asking, we're eagerly awaiting any information from IRCC on whether they will extend the study permit at 40-hour study permit students working for 40 hours beyond December 31st, 2023. At this point, we don't have any additional insight on any programs that is outside of what would be listed on IRCC's website with that program. Yeah, so Eve, there's no other questions here that I can kind of generally answer. But like I said, if anyone would like to reach out, please do so. We'd be happy to answer your questions with following a discussion.
Okay, great. So that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and a really big special thanks to Alexandra and Madison for sharing their expert knowledge. If you'd like to discuss today's topics in more detail, as we mentioned before, please reach out to book a consultation. The details are on screen right now. And I encourage all of you to sign up for our e-alerts and follow us on social media to keep up to date with the latest developments on Inside Immigration. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.